Hi Flosstube, I'm Annie and I'm the Proper Stitcher, and welcome to episode number 40. This is a special edition episode where I am going to show you how to finish one of your cross stitch projects on a sticky board and attached to some sort of wooden piece. What I stitched for this project and for this tutorial is my JBW Designs French Country Amour. I showed this to y'all in my last video, episode 39, and this is the pattern. This is the JBW Designs French Country Amour, and here's my finished piece. I stitched this on 28 count Luminous Fiber Arts Salted Caramel fabric, and I used Clay Pot Classic Colorworks floss, and I used 2 strands of floss over 2, and I just love the variegation of this pink thread. It looks so cute on this design. I will link Luminous Fiber Arts website below. You can also order their fabric from multiple local needle workshops. And then if the same with Judy Whitman, I will link her Flosstube below and her website below, but you can also get her patterns from your local needle workshop as well. So let me tell you what I did. The tutorial will go over everything, but I want to tell you a few things before you jump right into that part. I mounted my stitched piece on a board from Stitch Etc. I will link Stitch Etc.'s contact information below. They have a Facebook page where you can order any of their boards. They have so many different shapes, sizes, and colors. You can also email them if you do not have Facebook and you would like to order from them. This is just a white board. I can't remember the name of this board. They all have names, and I think that's so fabulous that they do that. But this measures 5.5 by 5.5. So it's the perfect size for so many different projects. So I am going to show you step by step how I finished this. Let me tell you a few things you'll need. I'll link the list of materials below, but you will need some sort of wooden piece or wooden paddle. I highly recommend Stitch Etc. And you will need some sort of background fabric. For this piece, I used 3 Sisters Cranberries and Cream fabric. You will need some sort of trim or ribbon if you'd like. I also show you in this video how to finish a cover button. So those are the accessory type materials you'll need, but you'll also want to have some sticky board. I like using the sticky board from Fat Quarter Shop. It is very sturdy, it doesn't warp with glue, and it's easy to cut, and I just think that it is a fantastic product. I'll link that below as well. You'll definitely want some measuring tools. I use these, I use these rulers, but use any kind of ruler that works for you. Your cutting tools, I have a rotary cutter and some scissors that I've used. Adhesive glue, I used in this video, I used both hot glue gun, and you can also use the Aleene's Tacky glue. Both are perfect for finishing your pieces. So watch the video. We'll recap at the end and get a pen and paper and take some good notes. See you in a minute. Okay, so I have everything ready to go. I have my glue gun heating up. I have my iron turned on. I have all of the finishing materials here. This is the French Country Amour from JBW Designs. I stitched this on 28 count Luminous Fiber Arts Salted Caramel. I used Clay Pot Classic Colorworks, and I stitched this using 2 strands of floss over 2. And I have chosen 3 Sisters fabric. This is from their Cranberries and Cream line. I just love this red paisley. Here's what it's going to look like on a piece of sticky board. And I might use this covered button that I made, and I'll show you how to make these as one of my finishing trims, or maybe for a bow. And this is the Stitch Etc. board that I will be using today. And I found this cream trim, like lace trim, in my stash that I'm going to be using as a decorative piece in between the stitched piece and the fabric for the back. So let's break down all these measurements, and I'm going to show y'all how to do this step by step, and hopefully it won't be too confusing. Okay, so this board from Stitch Etc., the center piece, the center of this board measures 5.5 by 5.5. And I like for there to be about 1/2 inch of the wood exposed all the way around. So because I know that this is 1/2 inch all the way around, I need to cut my square 5 by 5. So I'm going to show y'all how to cut the 5 by 5 square and then cut the material to wrap. So when I cut material to wrap on sticky board, I give myself 1.5 inches extra fabric for folding over in the back. So this is a 5 by 5 piece of sticky board. So the fabric I'm going to cut is 6.5 by 6.5. So we'll go through that in just a moment. The same goes for my stitched piece. I know that the stitched piece measures just a little under, if I measure it, I don't know if y'all can see that. If I measure it, it measures just under 3 inches all the way. It's a little irregular. So we're gonna say it measures 3.5 by 3.5 all the way around. And so because I know that this measures 3.5 by 3.5 all the way around, I'm going to want a 1.5 inch border all the way around when I cut it, so I have enough fabric to fold around the back. So if we say that this is 3.5 by 3.5 and I want a 1.5 inch all the way around, I am going to cut this 5 by 5. So I'll show you how I do that when I get to this step. So let's start with the sticky board for the 5 by 5 piece. And I do use batting in between because I want this to be a little bit puffy when I go to mount my other piece on. So let's start with cutting sticky board. And I'm going to pull out all of my measuring tools. So I apologize, this is probably going to be a little bit loud, especially if you're wearing earbuds. So let's start by cutting the sticky board 5 by 5. And let me find my piece of sticky board. Here it is. All right, so we're going to cut this to measure 5 by 5. So what I do is I find the 5, line up my board to the 5 and cut. And then I turn it, line it up to the 5, and cut again. And save your extra pieces. These are great scraps to have and use for future. Now, since I already have this out, I'm going to go ahead and cut my piece for my cross stitch piece. So I know that I want that piece to be 5 by 5. No, that can't be 5 by 5. It's going to be 3.5 by 3.5. So there's the 3.5 and 3.5. All right, so I have my two pieces, and this is what they'll look like. And I don't know, I think I'm going to do this 4 by 4. I think I want it to be just a little bit bigger, and then we'll play around with it when I get to that step. 4 by 4. And then that'll give us a good options there to play with. Okay, so let me get this out of here. And now I'm going to cut the fabric. So I'm going to use this turntable just to help me turn for filming purposes. So here is my fabric. And I have a good size piece of this fabric. And as I mentioned, I'm going to cut this into 6.5 by 6.5. I happen to have a ruler that is 6.5 inch square. If you do not have one of these rulers, all you would simply need to do is line it up on your cutting mat to the 6.5 inch mark, cut, and then turn and cut again. But I have the square ruler, so I'm going to use that as sort of my guide today. So I'm going to turn this around and cut 6.5 by 6.5 inches, thereabouts. And I've misplaced, here it is. Here's my rotary cutter. one cut and another cut. Okay. So let me get this out of here. Now, I am going to take my batting square that I have, because I want to have the batting square in between my fabric and my sticky board. So I'm going to take my sticky board and take this piece off. It gets a little hard to peel that off sometimes, but you have to get your fingernail in there just right. So peel that piece of sticky paper off. Okay. And then, let me adjust my mirror, my camera. Then I just place it on the batting square. So when I do that, then I come back and cut the extra off. Okay, so that part's done. And now we're going to glue the material to the batting square. So here's my 6.5 inches by 6.5 inches. Here's my 5 by 5 sticky board. Now when I do this, what I want to do is I want to go to all the corners and glue those down first. So I have my glue gun ready to go. And I'm just going to go ahead and glue the corners. So there's number one. And be careful, the glue gun gets really hot. So I'm going to do these two corners first, just because they're here, and then I'm going to turn this. And I like to keep a piece of cardboard or a pie plate, like an aluminum pie plate, for my glue gun, so it doesn't drip hot glue on my table or on my cutting board or anything like that. And then I'm going to do, ouch, hot. And last corner, and press that down. So now that all my corners are done, just like a present, I'm going to do opposite sides. So let's go ahead and glue this side. And I like to get the glue just about 1/4 inch from the edge. So I'm going to go a little, and a little bit goes a long way, because we're also going to glue this down to the board, so we don't have to have a whole lot of glue. So I'm going to pull this tight. Now, some people don't like using hot glue, and that is okay. You can always use the tacky glue from Aleene's or the spray glue. I just like using the hot glue. I know it's going to work. I know it's going to hold it down. I don't have to wait as long for it to dry. So you do what you feel comfortable or what you have. Okay, so let's pull this other corner. So pull that as tight as you can, or, you know, smooth it out as much as you can. I keep touching that glue gun. So this is what we have so far. We have two edges that are pulled tight. Now we're going to do the opposite sides. So same as before, about 1/4 inch from the edge. And this is where we're going to get the corners as neat as we can. So I'm going to start in this corner and just pull it to that corner. And just kind of work with it as you go. You can, this is so easy to work with. And I just take my corners and mash them in. And it gives you just these nice little corners. Now we're going to do this side. So about 1/4 inch from the edge. And there we go. Okay, so let me pull this down. And it is hot. Very, very hot. I need to get myself some of those silicone fingertip things for glue guns, but I just haven't done that yet. Okay, so all of my corners are done, and I'm very happy with that. So I have 2 of these now. Maybe I'll make another one. So let's push that aside, and now what I want to do is cut my stitched piece. So I've already ironed it, and I want to be careful to cut the right amount. So I've got a pretty big piece of fabric here, and I don't need all this fabric, but I don't want to waste any of my linen. We all know how hard it is to get linen. So I'm going to pull this out, and I'm going to get my ruler. And remember, we're going to cut from each edge of a stitched piece 1.5 inches. So I'm going to pull out my ruler and measure 1.5 inches along each piece and cut. And I want it to be straight. So here's my 1.5 inch mark. So I'm going to line up 1.5 inches from the outer stitched piece on this side and cut. And so there's one, and now I'm going to turn, and I'm going to cut 1.5 from the top. I want to make sure it's straight. So there's the 1.5 inch mark again. And what I like to do is when I get my line where I want it, I follow it up on my other grid to make sure that this ruler is lined up with the lines on here, so I know that I am cutting a straight line. Cut. Now I'm going to turn. And I'm going to cut again. So here is my 1.5 inch. Okay. And I don't think that's straight, so let me straighten it just a little bit. Okay, 1.5 inches, and here we go. And last cut, I'm going to use this line over here to be my square off piece. And here's the 1.5 again. And let me line that up so that it's straight. And what I'm doing is I'm using this white line and I'm lining it up here to make sure that I'm straight, and then cut. Okay. So now I didn't waste my piece of linen that I have. Now, I like to do interfacing on the back of my stitched piece. I think it gives it a little bit more of stiffness, and I just would rather it have that stiffness for this finish. So I'm going to pause. I'm going to go iron on some interfacing, and I will link below the type of interfacing that I use, and then I'll be right back. Okay, so I'm back, and I have ironed my interfacing on the back of my stitched piece, and I decided to use the 3.5 by 3.5 inch square because I want it to be just smaller so you can see more of my background fabric. So I'm going to peel off the sticky, the cover on the sticky board, and then place that there. And now I'm going to cut this sticky board, or the batting square, off of the sticky board, the excess off of the sticky board. Okay, so now let's glue. Again, you can use the Aleene's glue, whatever you feel the most comfortable with. I just want to make sure that I get this centered when I lay this down. And so this is a trick that Priscilla Blaine taught me with Stitching with Housewives. And what she does is she lines it up where she wants her board to meet, and then she lays it flat. And I messed up when I was cutting. I didn't cut enough on this side. So I should have measured twice and cut once, but I didn't. So that's a little bit off center. And I can see where the board is behind it. So when I feel like I have it where I want it, I'm going to do just a little spray of Aleene's just to help me keep it in place. I didn't mean to spray that directly onto my piece, but I meant to get just on the batting square, but that will dry. That's the beauty of the Aleene's glue. Okay, I think that's pretty centered when I go to glue it down. So now I have that where I want it. And I am now going to go and do the corners just like before. I'm going to do the corners first. And pull it. Now the interfacing is completely optional. You do not have to use interfacing. Interfacing is really used for when you finish things into a pillow. It gives it that sturdiness to help it stand up in a bowl, or if you're filling it with lizard litter or walnut shells or anything like that, it keeps them from falling out through the holes of your linen. I like the interfacing. I feel like it gives the piece just a little bit more protection and a little bit more substance when I'm gluing. But like I said, it's completely optional. You do not have to use interfacing. If you are using interfacing for a framed piece that you're taking to a professional, do not use interfacing for a framed piece that you are taking to a professional finisher, because then they won't be able to lace it or pull it, stretch your linen for lacing. So only use the interfacing for at-home pillows or things like we're doing today. If you're lacing or framing your own piece, don't use interfacing. So hopefully that makes sense. This linen, this Luminous Fiber Arts is a wonderful piece of linen. It's thick enough that it's easy to work with, and I feel like it's going to look really nice once I get this together. Oh, let me turn it this way so I can see what I'm working with. And then get our corners just a little bit clean and neat. So just pull it down. There. And then what I do here is I'm just going to go in and pinch them closed, just so they're a nicer and more polished corner. And now we're going to do the side. Last side. Oops. Try not to glue your finger to the sticky board. All right. Last side, and then we can layer all of these pieces. See what happened when I cut it too short on that side? But it's okay. Just triple measure before you cut, especially your stitched piece. But I didn't line it up to the right line, and I just cut it too short. Okay. I don't like that corner. And when you get a little too much glue, I'm just going to wipe some of that glue on this paper from the sticky board and then pinch it a little bit more. And then kind of lay them flat. There's my heart. All right, so let's layer these pieces together. And I want to use some of this trim. So we're going to glue that as well. So this is what it'll look like. There's that piece, and here's this. Now you don't have to use the trim, but I just think it, just like with Rick Rack, it's going to give it a nice little feminine touch. So I'm going to do that first. I'm going to glue it to the back of this, and then we're going to glue them together. So what I want to do is I like this little scalloped edge, and I'm going to look at it and make sure that that is how I want it to look. And it is. So when I use something like this that has a line, I make sure I follow that line and keep it consistent all the way around. And I'm going to glue it down and then cut as I go and do all four sides. So let me first start with a clean edge. Okay. So I'm going to put a little bit of glue here. Again, you can use the Aleene's glue. It works just as well. Okay. And I'm going to glue this. I'm going to go a little bit over. And then place it down. And you can do one of two things. You can turn it and keep going, but I want to keep that edge out. If we were using rickrack, you can easily do that. But I'm going to cut it here. You can also measure and do it that way, and cut your pieces. I'm going to cut that off. And now I'm going to do it again. Okay. And then place it on the hot glue and cut. Turn it. And then every once in a while, look to make sure you like the way it's turning out. And then I'm going to do this side. Glue. Hot. Okay. And then place it down and cut. And you can still work with it just for a couple of minutes if it's not exactly the way you want it. And I like how it's turning, it's looking so far. So now we're going to do this side. Oh, in this little corner, this might need a little bit more glue. And I'm trying to be really conservative with my trim because I want to try to make a bow to finish this off. So hopefully I have enough left over for that because I didn't have, this was, like I said, in my stash. So I'm being a little messy today. Okay, so there's that. And I'm going to flip it over and see if I like how it looks. I've got a little too much here. So I'm going to get my smaller scissors and go into there and trim that just a touch. There. So that is how it is turning out. Yay, I love it. Okay, so now what we're gonna do is glue all this together. And what some people do is they like to use magnets just so they can reuse this board over and over. I just glue it all down. And so what I'm gonna do first is glue the outer piece down. And it does not take a lot of glue. If you use too much glue, it warps the board. So just a little bit of glue is all you need. And put a little bit more here. And press it onto the wooden board. And this is also where that piece of batting in there comes in handy. So if the board warps a little bit, you still have some substance with that batting square. And now I'm going to do our stitched piece onto here, onto the outer layer. There. Now we can stop right here and not do anything else, and that would be completely fine. That would be a nice, simple finish. But I think I want to see what it looks like if I try to add some ribbon and use this as a ribbon and as this as a bow. So let me see if that's going to work. If it does, then I'll show you how to do those things. Hold on one second. So I've decided I am going to do a bow and use the button that I've made. So let's do the bow first, and then I'll show you how to make the buttons. So I have my red ribbon. This is like a nylon ribbon. I have the remaining of my trim, and I have one needle threaded with red string. I want to try to thread. And I have one needle threaded with the cream colored thread. So I'm going to just figure out how big I want my bow to be. And I really want it to be a little wider than the handle on the paddle. So I am going to loop the bow, make sure I leave a tail because I'd like to have a little bit of a tail for the bow. So I'm going to loop it twice and see how big that is. And I like that size. So I'm going to do this one more time because I want it to be a bigger bow. So I'm going to go around like this. And then I'm going to make sure I leave a tail so that when I cut it, I have a tail on both sides. So I'm going to line up all of those layers that I just looped and get my needle with the red string, the red thread, and I'm going to come in from the back, and I am just going to attach all of these layers together. So I'm going to go through a couple of times. Try not to get the loop in there. I think I did. Let me pull that out. Okay, so what I've done is I have gone through and I have attached all of those layers with the thread. I'm going to do that a couple of more times just to make it a little bit more sturdy. And then once I do this a few more times, I'm going to wrap the string around it, the thread around it, and tie it off and cut it off. Oh, I keep doing that. Here we go. And so I am almost there. Oh, I think I got my bow in that. I did. Hold on one second. Let me fix this. Sometimes that happens. There. I keep wanting to get part of the ribbon in there. So pull it through. Okay. So once you get it like that, then you wrap it around a couple of times. And that's going to cinch the center of that bow for you. And this is going to, the center part's going to be covered anyway with the other button, or excuse me, the other trim piece and the button. But we still want to kind of cinch it as much as we can, get it where you want it. And now I'm going to wrap it to the back of the bow and do a knot. So I'm going to feed it through and knot it. This is just how I do it. This may not be the right way, but this is just how I do it. And then I'm going to knot that in the back. Okay. And now I'm going to cut that piece of string and trim up this piece of string and see how I like it. This isn't my favorite kind of ribbon to use, but it's all I had in my stash. So I'm going to cut this to match this side. And now, again, I can leave it right there and put this on it. But I think I want just a little bit more on it. So I'm going to tie in this twine, or this lace, and do the same thing. So I'm going to make it about the same size, maybe just a touch smaller, and loop it. And I'm only going to do this one probably twice because it doesn't need to be as full, I don't think. Let me see. Yeah, I don't think it needs to be as full. So I'm only going to do this one 2 times. So leave the tail, wrap it, and make another tail. And then now I'm going to attach all of these layers together using my threaded needle with a knot. So come in from the back. Now this is not, I need to be careful not to pull the knot through. This knot wants to come all the way through. And then pull it through and do that just a few more times. Oh, I got to entangle. Hold please. Okay, there. Okay. Let me fix this. I just got a knot. Okay. And let me fix that again. Okay. Now, let's do a few more times through. And then we'll do the same where we wrap it around. Okay, there. And also when you wrap the thread around, it just gives it, like I said, it makes it look like a cinched bow, you know, where it ties in the middle. That's really what we want. So I'm going to do that a couple of times around and then tie it off in the back. And one more time and doing a little knot there. Now let's attach all of these together. And cut that. Okay, and let me clean that up just a little bit. And so I like to play with everything before I officially attach it. So let's see how this is going to look. I don't know. I don't know if I love it. Do I love it? Let me look at it. I do like it once I get it all together. Okay, so let's glue this all together. So first things first, I'm going to glue a little piece for the ribbon, the red ribbon, and place it. And now I'm going to glue this piece on. I'm going to put a little bit more because this is a little bit heavier. And I'm going to put that right there and hold it in place for a second. Now these buttons, when you make these buttons, I'm about to show you, it has that little tail. I'm going to push that in. And now we're going to glue this on. And I'm generous with my glue. Now, while this is cooling or drying, I'm going to show y'all how to make this button. They are so easy and so much fun to make. So there we have it. There's our finished piece. So I'm going to pause for just a second and then I'm going to show y'all how to make the button and then we're going to come back together for everything else. Okay, so here's where I cut to make the first one. So the first thing you want to do, and I will link below this button toolkit, where I bought this. I got it at Joann's. So here's a scrap piece of my fabric. And what you do is you turn it over and you can fussy cut if you see a design that you want to showcase, you can fussy cut that. Like I like to have a little bit more of the color. That's going to be too much white on the button cover. So I'm going to go more to the red. And you use this tool. And what I'm going to do is take a pen. You can take a pencil and just outline the outer circle. Go all the way around it. And I just love making these buttons. They're so much fun. Then you just cut that circle. You can use a quilting pen. For this purpose, I'm not worried about the ink. It's going to be hidden. The button's smaller than this. So just trim, cut all the way around it. And we're almost done. We're halfway there with the button. Okay, so that's done. So this is the center piece of the tool. It's just like this little rubber piece. You place this in it, the piece of fabric that you just cut. And then the button comes with two sides. This is the outer part of the button. So it goes in the hole first. And then this is the back of the button. So you push that all the way in. And if you can even look on this side to see if you like the design that's showing or the pattern that's showing on the button. Push it all the way through. And I like the way it looks, so I'm going to push this fabric in. Now we take this part of the button. Excuse me, that is not correct. Yes, it is correct. You push all that fabric in, then you take this outer piece and this blue tool. So you have that pushed in. You take this, cover that hole, and then push it in. And you just really push it hard. And if you can't push it, use something to help you. And you just get it, mash it all the way in, all the way around, and hear it snap. And then your button is done. And that's it. That is how you make a button with those tools. You can leave this out or you can push it in. They push right in. So super easy, super fun. You can make little needle minders with this and put a magnet on the back. So much fun. So let's recap everything. So hold on one second. That's it. That is how I make my French Country and More from JBW Designs and how I mount it on a Stitch Etc. board. Hopefully this was a tutorial that made sense to you, and that if that is something that you can include in your day-to-day finishing ideas. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to comment below or email me. My email is theproperstitcher@gmail.com. You can also find me on Facebook and on Instagram, both The Proper Stitcher, all listed below. You can also follow me on my blog, which is www.theproperstitcher.com. Thanks, and I'll see you soon.